In this video, we will show you how to replace your door lock actuator on this Toyota Sienna. This will be located inside of your door. Let's get into it. Okay friend, let's get started on our job. We're going to have to remove the door panel to gain access for the removal process. To remove the door panel, we'll be starting in the upper corner. For this, we're going to remove this trim panel. Use a plastic trim tool, make our way in between this area, and gently separate it. A quick inspection will set this aside. Now let's make our way down towards where the window and door lock switches are. Continuing with our plastic trim tool, we're going to pop this trim panel up and out of place. Keep in mind there are wiring harnesses along the back side. Now looking along the back here, we'll disconnect this by squeezing in on the locking tab, right where my index finger is. You should be able to pull that out of place. A quick inspection of that harness. If you see any funny colors, that's corrosion and it would need to be dealt with. This one looks fine. Now behind this area, we'll be looking for this Phillips head screw. Go ahead and remove it. We'll make our way up from there. Behind the inside door handle, you're going to find that you have a protective cover. Use a small pick to pull this out of place. And now behind this area, we have another Phillips head screw. Now we're going to follow the door panel out towards where the door latch assembly would be. You're going to find you have another Phillips head screw. Let's remove this. Back to using our plastic trim tool, we're going to separate the door panel from the door. Along the center lower aspect of the door panel, you're going to find a notched out area that you can use that trim tool. Gently make your way in between and start prying that door panel away. With that pulled away from the door, we're going to have to start lifting up on the door panel and pulling it away, but you do want to be careful. There are some cables along the backside. When you go to remove the cables, pay attention to their orientation. You can tell that one area is white along here, the top, and then the cable just below it is the green cable. When we go to reinstall these, we want to make sure we have them in the same orientation. The white cable along the top. To remove these, just take hold of it and pop it right out of place. We're going to pivot it, and then you're going to find that you have the cable has a small ball at the end. You just want to lift it up and out of that groove. A quick inspection of the cable to ensure that it's not damaged in any way. We'll do the same exact thing to the other one. Now we'll have to make our way down along the bottom here. We do have one more wiring harness. Small locking tab right in the center area there. We'll pop it out of place. Go ahead and remove that door panel. With the door panel out of the way, let's start removing some of the vapor barrier from this area so we can gain access to our door lock actuator. As you start pulling this away, pay attention to this black goo. That's butyl tape. You don't want to get it on your clothing. It's very sticky. It's about far enough. We'll just roll this so we don't have to worry about anything getting on our clothing. With that out of the way, continue on to your electrical connector. For this, you'll find that you do have a locking tab. You want to depress the locking tab and gently pull that out of place. A quick inspection on each end for corrosion, and we'll set the wiring harness aside for now. Now looking along the outside of the door here, you can see that we have 3 T30 torque screws to remove. As we remove the final one, we'll make sure we're holding on to the assembly on the inside of the door there. Now with that dismounted, the next thing that we need to do is have a look inside the door. We're looking at this rod. You can see that it makes its way all the way up along the backside of the door handle. To disconnect this, you'll find that you have a yellow locking tab on this. We just want to pull that away from the rod, slide the rod out of place. There we are. There's our rod. This is the portion that had that yellow connector. As you make your way down here, this is the portion that goes through your door lock actuator. Along the inside of the door here, you have two 10mm headed bolts that hold your window channel in place. We'll be removing these. At this point, you should be able to reach inside of the door, pull that window channel out of the way, take hold of the door lock actuator, and remove it from the door. Let's get this over to the bench. On the bench, we're going to transfer over our cables from the original door lock actuator to the brand new door lock actuator. We'll start with this one right here. You should be able to pop that right up and out of place. We'll pivot it and slide that up and out of there as well. As I mentioned, we're going to transfer it right over to the brand new actuator here, so we'll just slide that down along there. Continue on putting this in place. You can see where the groove is, needs to fit into those two ears. Press it in, listen for a click, give it a tug to make sure it's completely secure. You do not want this falling out while you're driving down the road. Let's make our way back over here to the original. We're going to have to pop this cover. Just use a small pick, whatever you might happen to have. You should be able to pry that right out of place. It does have a couple locking tabs. Under that area is where you're going to find the next cable. Pull that up. At this point, we're going to pivot the cable. We'll lift the hooked end out of there and transfer it over as I mentioned before. Bring that straight down and through the hole. Continue on with that cable portion there. Press it in. Now we're going to make sure this is locked in by closing this trapdoor. Listen for a click from that. Double check, make sure it's secure. Let's get this over to the vehicle. Let's just take hold of that window channel metal bracket here. You should be able to slide that right off of the rubber portion. A quick inspection. We'll set this aside temporarily. Now, as for the rubber portion of the window channel, we just want to tuck that up and out of the way. Now we have a clear view of what's going on in here. Now, if you were to look deep inside this area, on the inside of the outside door handle, you can see that you do have this lock rod. That comes from outside where your door lock is, and it's supposed to go into the latch assembly. You can see the tip of that. Now, if you were to look at the top of your latch assembly that you're going to be installing now, you can see exactly where it needs to go. We'll get this in position. Let's see if we can get this latch in here. Go along the back side of that shaft there. Now, this part can be a little bit of a tight fit, trying to get the shaft into the back side of that lock actuator. So try to squeeze it in. There we are. Now we'll just pivot this into place. Align everything else. Install your 3 mounting bolts. Snug them up, torque those to 44 inch-pounds. Now it's time to reinstall the window channel. Let's get that rubber portion back down so we can gain access to that. Now, while we have that down in this area, you'd want to continue on with the metal portion of this. You can see that the rubber portion will slide right inside of this channel. If it feels like it's binding, it's probably not aligned properly. I'm just going to bring this down in here so I can get it set up. Now let's start bringing this to the proper position so we can install our two 10mm headed mounting bolts. Now we can install our rod. When we go to install this, we'll be taking the lower portion, coming in at an angle down into the door lock actuator. After that, you want to swing this up into the proper position and lock it in with that yellow connector. I heard an audible click as I was pushing that in. Now we'll just take that yellow connector and lock it down. Give that rod a quick inspection, make sure it's properly secured before you continue. Now it's time for our electrical connector. Press it in, listen for a click. We'll give that a little tug to make sure it's properly secured as well. Now it's time to install our vapor barrier. As we bring this over, you want to ensure that the cables make their way on the opposite side of the vapor barrier. We want to be able to install those onto the inside door handle. Once you do have the cables put through, continue on with that vapor barrier, pressing it back into its original position. Now that we can see we have our cables out, the vapor barrier is reinstalled, it's time for the door panel. Now it's time to reinstall the door panel. Before we do, there's several things that we want to pay attention to. Along the bottom, we have our wiring harness. We're going to want to make sure that we reconnect that. Towards the center here, we also have another wiring harness for that window switch. As you continue making your way up, you're going to have the area for your cables. And you also want to pay attention along the top of that door panel. You have this ridged area where I'm holding. That needs to come up nice and high, and it's going to make its way up and over this area of the door. With all that said, let's start at the bottom with the electrical connector. Let's start with this electrical connector down at the bottom here. There we are. We'll give that a little tug. Let's continue bringing this up. We'll be paying attention to our cables now. When we remove these, I had told you to pay attention to the orientation. As you remember, up along the top, you had the white, and then down below that, the next cable is the one with the green. We'll start with the green, which is the lowest one here. Slide the very end in, and then you're going to bring this around and lock it into position. Same thing for the top. Slide it in, swing it, lock it in. Now, as we start bringing this up, we're going to pay attention to our window wiring harness there. We want to reach through the door panel, take hold of that, and make sure you do have access to it. We'll just slide it right on through. Bringing the door panel up nice and high, as I mentioned, we're going to make sure we go over that lip. We'll start bringing this down. Once you can look along the side and you can see that you're properly aligned, we'll continue on driving this in. We have all of those push clips that will squeeze into the door. Take hold of the door panel, make sure it's properly secured. Let's continue on with the mounting hardware for the door panel. We'll be using our Phillips head with our rubber bumper here. Let's make sure that's snug. Now we'll make our way over towards where the grab handle is. We'll be reinstalling our Phillips head screw here. You'll be using the longer of the two Phillips head screws. Let's get this right into position. Make sure that's nice and tight. Now it's time for the window switch. When you go to put this in position, we'll be paying attention to all of our locking tabs, making their way around, aligning them with the door panel. Press it down, make sure that's properly secured. We'll be using the shorter Phillips head screw for inside the inside door handle here. Install your protective cover. Now we can get this last trim piece on here. You want to pay attention. Along the bottom, you will have a hook, and then a secondary hook right along here. Up along the top, you should find that you do have a push clip. If it's missing from here, it's probably in the mounting point. If that's the case, just go ahead and pry it out of there, insert it in the trim panel. Bring those hooks down and into place, and lock it in. Now, before we go ahead and shut the door, let's go ahead and listen to this area while pressing on the lock button. I can hear it functioning like it should. The next thing we're going to do is make sure the window is down, and we'll test the functionality. Right now, the door's unlocked. We'll lock the door. That's a good sign. Unlock the door. Perfect. Thanks for watching.
When only the best will do, demand TRQ. The only company that lets you view before you do. TRQ is committed to offering the highest quality aftermarket auto parts that are engineered for peace of mind. Thanks for using and viewing with TRQ.